Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to JLX Friends Benefits podcast. With me, your host, as always, Xander Conover, and today I'm joined by the wonderful Abbie. Abbie, I'm really glad to have you on today. I think this is going to be a conversation which so many people are going to benefit from hearing. I think there are some topics that we are going to be touching on, which I think for a lot of people will be things that they've either felt or are feeling. And I think sometimes it just helps quite a bit to be able to understand that you're not the only one who feels that way, and there are other people who feel that way as well. So a little bit about Abbie. I'm going to let Abbie introduce herself, but just before I do, I want to say that I highly respect Abbie. I think she does a wonderful job. You know, she has a fantastic business. She has, for those of you who don't know, she runs Evolve Online Coaching. Abbie has a BSc in sport exercise and nutrition, and of course is a full-time online coach as well. And without kind of further ado, I'm going to hand over to Abbie just to give herself a little hello, and then we'll take things from there.
Yeah, so I've been coaching for the past nearly coming up to a year now, to be fair. Went full-time in June last year, and then before that I was just doing it part-time. Worked in public health in the NHS a little bit before that, but recently we've grown to we've got about 110 girls now, so they're all absolutely smashing all their goals, and that is me pretty much doing it full time. So yeah, love it.
That's absolutely fantastic. And actually, I was going to say, you know, a huge congratulations, because I know we were talking the other day, I think you were mentioning at that point about bringing on another coach and actually expanding your team and stuff. And I just wanted to say, you know, congratulations for that, because it's just wonderful seeing people grow, seeing people educate people, and actually delivering a really good service as well. So, you know, massive congratulations, especially, you know, starting a business in COVID of all times. Some would call you mad.
Yeah, no, I got a lot of, my old manager very much doubted my choice, and so did my mum, but it's turned out all right. And I think, you know what, if you don't give it a go, you're never going to know what could it have been. And the thing is, you can always, you can try to always go and get another job. Like, there's always something else going to be out there for you. So if you don't try, you don't know. But yeah, we're hiring another coach. She is a registered nutritionist, and she's going to be starting with us next month. So that's going to be a big add for a lot of the girls that we take on, because essentially it's not just going to be looking at their training or their macros or their nutrition and reaching their goals, but what they can do for their body in terms of their health and things like bloating and gut health and hormones. You know, a lot of that is a lot deeper than what people think, and it's going to benefit them massively to be able to have that someone to reach out to there as well.
Awesome. Well, a big congratulations for that. I think it's, as I said, it's really very cool. Now, speaking of this, I spoke to Millie a little bit about this last week, actually, and a lot of the people who listen to our podcast are like either interested in coaching, potentially aspiring coaches, or just generally like to know a lot about business and things like that. And I think a lot of people would want to know, you know, hey, in a year, that's a huge amount of expansion. That's a huge growth. I know you've rebranded in the last kind of 8 weeks or so, 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Would you be open to kind of talking through a little bit about your journey, maybe what got you into coaching, maybe a little bit about that?
I think in terms of what got me into coaching, I guess from losing a lot of weight myself, I guess that was where it kind of sparked. And then, I mean, I went on to do it at university, having the urge to go and work in public health. I had no idea this is what I was going to end up doing, but essentially I was like, yeah, I want to work in public health, but having that sports background, that nutrition background there for exercise is going to help. Because that's what I'm interested in. And obviously you don't need a degree to do this job, but it does certainly help and give me a lot of knowledge that a lot of people, I guess, wouldn't have. In terms of how I got into this, I think it was just a case of starting up my Instagram account and seeing all these people doing this job and thinking, I'm not happy in this job that I'm doing now, and I want to do that. And I think if you tell yourself that you can do it, if you're going to say, you know what, I'm going to go and do that, then there literally will be nothing that gets in the way of it. So, I mean, I started actually last Christmas offering 10 free spaces, because I think you need to show people what you can do, because you can't just expect people to be paying for a service if they don't know what they're going to get from it. So
sure.
I took on 10 people for free for 12 weeks. And then they all did great, and they all did really, really well. And then I think my first client came to, I think, to be fair, I got my first client just through posting on social media and on Instagram and saying, this is what I'm offering. Who wants to come and give it a go? But yeah, I had one client and I was ecstatic. I was like, oh, I have one paying client. This is the start. And then from there, I mean, I don't know whether COVID helped or not. I'm going to say it did, because luckily online coaching was one of the things that you could actually keep doing.
Yeah.
Like, obviously all gyms shut, personal trainers probably had to move online, but I was already there. So I think when lockdown happened, I had about 20 clients. So about 4 months in, I was standing solid on about 20 clients. And then from there, I think when COVID came, it just kind of rocketed. And thankfully, now, even though things are getting back to normal, it's not dropped back down. So yeah, really, really good. Big jump. Lots of time and effort, lots of persistence, and lots of posting on social media, but actually posting what you think people, you have to post what you want to attract in terms of clients. So what people are struggling with and what you think you can help with, and giving out free information. Obviously it takes time and it might not bring you any clients, but it's more likely to bring you the clients than not, because people relate to what you're saying. And I share a lot of my own journey on Instagram. So it's not all just about people like to relate to you as well. I think a lot of the girls I work with tend to relate to what I'm doing as well. So yeah, that helps massively.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it certainly helps. I think when you've gone through your own journey as well, it doesn't just give you the kind of physical know-how, but it gives you that kind of empathy, and it gives you the ability for other people to see, hey, like, they've been through this, and I think that they could probably help me. If they can do that, then surely that they can show me, or at least they can support me through that. Because I think for a lot of people, it's like a belief pattern, isn't it? It's the fact that they don't think they can do it. And I think for a lot of people, then when they see somebody else in a similar situation or potentially worse situation, they're like, well, if they can do it, then surely I can do it. And then obviously you hand out that free content, which is like, this is what I'm doing. And they're like, hey, shit, this is cool. Like, let's do this. And they get on board with it, and they kind of trust you and follow you from there, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think with me as well, I've probably done just about everything in terms of what you can do for fitness, reverse dieting, everything. I've been and done it. So at some point, someone along the line has probably seen that and been like, yeah, that's what I want to do, and I'm gonna get her to help me as well. So I think if you've been and done it, people they find it a lot easier to actually relate to you. And obviously you have to have that trust with a coach. You're not going to go and start working with someone who you think you wouldn't get on with, because that would just defeat all points of the situation. Having that kind of relationship with them as well helps a lot.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think as well, if you're trusting somebody with a sensitive issue like your relationship with food, or your worries about fat loss or gaining too much weight and things like that, I think you absolutely have to trust that person, because oftentimes you don't necessarily trust yourself. And so if you don't trust yourself and you're looking to put that trust into somebody else, it does definitely help to trust that person. And actually, I think that takes us really nicely into kind of the conversations that we're having today, right? In terms of like the difficulties that people face in terms of their nutrition. And I think a lot of people will look at nutrition as the whole and go, well, tracking macros is very difficult. I think that, I've heard a multitude of different verses on it. It's unhealthy, it's bad for you, it's this, it's that, it's, causes me mental distress. And I'm not putting any of these things aside as like a kind of fad or anything like that. I think everyone's opinions and things are worthwhile. But I do think that it counts for a lot to have both sides of the story. Because for some people in some populations, tracking your macros can be very, very beneficial. To some people, it really isn't. But I think there's so much like dichotomous thinking in like, it's either terrible or it's great. But I don't think people see both sides of the story in terms of tracking being good and bad, and not tracking being good and bad, and that big fat gray area in the middle, which hopefully we're going to dive into as we go through this, which I think is one of the hardest parts, because mentally that can be the toughest. So I think in terms of tracking macros, let's start there, because, I think that's a topic which we can both talk extensively about. As it stands, just to give you a quick background, tracking macros is simply where we look to weigh our food or take pictures of the barcodes of the packaging, and basically it counts the amount of calories you're having with the proteins, fats, and carbs. So that is what tracking is. You basically add all this up through the day, and then you can see how much you eat on a daily basis. So if you don't know what that is what it is. If you need any more information, then please ask. So basically what we do is when we're trying to lose weight, we're trying to gain weight, it works really nicely as a more accurate way of doing it, right? So it works as a way that we can track things a bit more directly, a bit closely, so that we're able to basically work towards the goal. Now, that's a very unemotional and a very logical way of looking at this system, because it's not as easy as going, I will put these numbers into my fitness pal, I will then track all this food and eat this food, and I will in 10 weeks time look like Zeus. It doesn't really work like that. Unfortunately, there's a little thing called your brain, which tends to play a bit of a role in this. And Abbie, I was hoping you could kind of share a little bit on kind of your experiences, because as you said just a moment ago about, you've done reversing, you've done the dieting, you've done a bit of gaining, you've done a bit of this, done a bit of that, the difficulties in terms of what can be faced with tracking. Could you just maybe label a couple and talk a little bit about how you've experienced those?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of tracking, I've probably, like I said, with every goal, been there and done it. But with tracking as well, like I can remember when I was in uni, I was not stepping foot over 1,400 calories. I had no idea about whether what to be having. I think no one ever knows what is the optimal amount of macros to be having. And I mean, that's probably because there is no optimal one number that you can reach for. But essentially, I wouldn't step a foot over 1,400, and it got to the point where I was like, is this actually benefiting me at all? And I think if you're using it in the wrong way, if you see it like that as I must do this or I'm failing, then obviously you are going to create a kind of negative relationship with it. But in my most recent dieting phase, I can absolutely say I wouldn't have been able to get the results that I did in such a short amount of time without tracking. So that, looking at it then, just kind of took me through every week knowing that I was doing the right thing and moving in the right direction. And that took a lot of stress away, because I think when you're not tracking, you're always second guessing, am I doing it right? Am I in the right place? Am I eating enough? Am I eating too little? But then again, I think it goes with making sure that whatever your goal is, the kind of macros that you're working towards are actually going to benefit you, because 1,400 calories, not really a good time for many people. Definitely not what I needed at that time. And I think if you're working towards numbers that aren't going to benefit you at all, then you're essentially just wasting a lot of time and energy on something and getting upset about a lot of things for no good reason.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think as well, it goes both ways, doesn't it? Because, we were talking about trust and how important that is. And I think setting your macros, it's really important that you are it, from my personal perspective, that you do them responsibly. So don't just whip them into an online calculator and hope for the best, or go on bodybuilding.com. I mean, it might have changed, but I remember they used to have a terrible one. And, in those instances, you then start to doubt, is this even right? I'm hungry. And then, if you don't have the experience or someone who is experienced to kind of put their arm around you and be like, yeah, you should be feeling this. This is part of the process. It's fine. Then you start to doubt yourself. And that's where you start thinking, well, obviously I need to use less calories. And as a coach, I'm sure you get this all the time as well, where people are like, I need less calories. I need less calories. And I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't.
Keep going. Just keep doing it.
Yeah.
There's so many of them calculators out there. There's so many different websites. And some of the crap that they'd come out with, and I'd be like, I don't even know what this means. Like, how is this going to benefit me? Obviously, that was quite a long time ago now. But the numbers, you just take it as, right, this is exactly what I need to do, and it's going to get me where I want to be. But I think it's people overcomplicate it as well, I think, with macros, and they think that you need to be at a wonderful optimal number, and you try something for a week and it doesn't work, and then all of a sudden you need to try a new optimal number, but really you just didn't wait long enough to see if it would work or not.
That's actually one of the things I think is very beneficial about tracking, if done properly, is that it does take the mental stress away from the guesswork. I think you touched on this really lightly a moment ago when you said it's less stressful at times, because I think in your last diet, for example, you tracked all the way through that. And if you're very busy, it is a bit more of a case of being a bit more unemotional and being like, right, these are the numbers. I'll pre-plan my food. I'll eat this tomorrow. And we'll, the next day we'll do the same thing. Whereas if you have times where, and again, this is a conversation we've had recently, where you look to track intuitively, it's actually very difficult. It's a real skill, and mentally the demons really do come out to play. We'll talk a bit more about that, I think, as we go. But certainly in terms of tracking macros themselves, what do you think the number one kind of mental block or maybe like mindset issue either you've had or you've seen in people these days that you think, yeah, this is, if I had to point out one thing I see the most, it would be that people struggle with X, for example?
I think it would be people struggle with or a lot of what I see is if they don't hit their macros or if they're a little bit off, a lot of people think, the entire day is ruined now. May as well scrap it and just try again tomorrow. And while we're at it, we'll eat a full aisle from Sainsbury's. Like, that's, your body's not going to know the difference. I mean, with me, and I know you tend to do this quite a lot as well, but give your clients a range to work towards, because if you land somewhere within there, it takes a lot of stress off. And it also gives you a lot more freedom with what you're going to eat. And it's not about I need to hit 150 grams of protein on the dot, because your body's really not going to know the difference whether you're hitting 150, 152 or 148. It doesn't really matter what you're going for. And I think people tend to panic way too much. And also with, how do I know? I think people worry, how do I know what the macros that I'm having, if they're right or wrong? And are my carbs enough? Are my fat enough? And what should they even be? But again, a lot of it, other than protein, essentially, kind of comes down to personal preference for food. And how, I think, knowing how your body runs best. And I think a lot of people don't know how their body runs best.
No, I agree with that. I think as well, it comes down to kind of, many points, but I think a lot of people try and split hairs with nutrition because they see other people doing it. So for example, they'll be like, hey, should I be having fat straight after my workout? And it's like, how advanced are you? Because if you're, and this is another point, people think it's cool to be advanced, they're like, yeah, I'm really advanced. And I think, poor you, because if you are that advanced, you're going to have to do a shitload of work to be able to get any change. I'd rather be a noob every day, because being a noob means I make loads of gains.
I think a lot of people struggle with macros in a way that they see it as they can literally put anything in there, and what do they put in there? And just kind of getting to them to realize that anything that you got taught at school about a healthy, balanced diet still applies. You're probably just eating a little bit more protein than what the average person would who sat down all day. That's the only difference. You still have to be relatively healthy, relatively controlled in your portions, and have a little bit of everything that you want to have. Like, I think people overcomplicate the nutrition side of tracking their macros a lot as well. And like you said, people are like, I need to eat exactly 20 grams of protein after my workout in 30 minutes. No, like, we're all right. We're not trying to be the next Mo Farah. And I bet he doesn't even worry about that either, because it's really not that essential.
He'll have someone else to worry about that anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is it, and I talk about this to a lot of my clients, people who I would say haven't got the fundamental bits right yet. It's like, okay, look, first pin we need to knock over is that calories. Can we consistently get in this range, whatever the macros are? Can you do that? And I think, like you say, it's very much of like a black and white mentality. It's like, I did it, I succeeded, I'm the king. I failed because I was outside, I suck. Whereas there's, I try and encourage this to everyone. It's like, okay, what did you do that meant that you went so far out? And they might say, tell you the truth, I just forgot to put something in. And then when I remembered later, I put it back in. And when you look at that with logic, it's like, you just made a human error. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not a human error when you neck a bag of Haribo and you just conveniently forget to put that in. That's a bit different. But I think that the point still stands in that when it comes to making tracking easier, look for making it easier. It's not about making it harder, because making it harder means getting results is harder. And I think that in a world that we live in at the moment where being hardcore is the thing, don't do that with your nutrition. Make it easy.
I think stripping it back sometimes, like, especially with my clients, if I ask them where they're at before they start. Have you tracked macros before? Do you even know what they are? And depending on what they say to me, they'll either get calories and protein or calories and full macro split. Because if you say to someone who's wanting to make a massive change in their life, right, here's 3 macronutrients, go and count them all day, that's just going to be so overwhelming. But if you can start small, and then once you've got the hang of that, move on to something a little bit more in depth, then great.
Yeah.
I think when you do that with them as well, I know a lot of the girls that I work with tend to learn a lot more about food when they start actually trying to track their macros, because this is an example that I tend to use quite a lot. Like with things like a chocolate bar, people always say, oh my God, it's so high in fat, like I can't eat that chocolate bar, what your mum would say. Well, that's what my mum would say anyway. But realistically, when you actually look at the macros of a chocolate bar, they're higher in carbs than they are in fat. So it does give you a little bit more in-depth knowledge on what is actually in the foods that you're eating, which I think a lot of people tend to lack. And I mean, you don't really need it, but it's helpful to know what you're having.
Yeah, I actually think that food labeling is really undervalued. I think a knowledge of how to read and understand a food label is so undervalued. And actually, like the majority of people I coach now tend to be like intermediate to advanced or coaches themselves. But I absolutely love it when I get someone who really has no clue, because it's quite exciting for me to be like, I can go into like full teacher mode of being like, right, the first thing we need to understand is, how do we read the label, like in the most unpatronizing way? What are you eating? And people are like, I had a client this week, for example, who was having nuts for breakfast, and quite a few nuts, and they weren't tracking the macros. We were just doing portion sizes, trying to get an idea for actually what is going where we're eating what. And she was like, oh my God, I had no idea fats were so rife in nuts, and therefore calories were so rife in nuts. And she said, I thought these were a health food. And I was like, whoa, hang on. They still are a healthy food. But what we're not taught is that the amount of that food, regardless of its health quantity, is still going to be something we need to consider. So portion sizes are important. And I think that's so valuable. And it's something that I think not many people necessarily have, because our portion sizes, or like knowledge of portion sizes, are so out of whack based on, I think, a number of things. I think social media being one of them. I think some people have a kind of warped idea of what a portion size is, in terms of like, it's tiny, and they're like, this is loads of food. And I'm like, I would feed my cat that.
I think it goes the other way as well, though, because I know a lot of the girls that I struggle with, if their calories have gone up, they'll be like, I can't, like, what do you want me to eat? Like, there are no more foods that I can put into my day. And it's like, well, you don't have to eat different foods. You can just eat more. Eat more pasta, eat more oats. Like, you don't need 8 million different foods in your day if you don't want to. Just eat more. You don't need to stick to a portion size. So I think that goes both ways. A lot of people are setting, this says 30 grams is a portion size, so I must have 30 grams, but that's not fun.
No. Interestingly, I have Cocoa Pops as my pre-workout, and honestly, I would dread to think how many grams I free pour of Cocoa Pops, because I've been having a measly 30 grams recently, which is like the recommended daily amount of like on the box, and I'm looking in the bowl and I'm like, where are they?
To be fair, actually, I think Cocoa Pop's quite filling for your 30 grams. I think you get quite a lot.
Oh no, I tell you what, when I was on my last maintenance, I like to make sure I don't really eat new foods, because they drive my senses nuts, and I'm someone who loves food. So if I start eating food that I've not had, like if I open a bag of nuts, for example, which I did do, which was a terrible mistake on my part because I ate the whole bag, my food senses go a bit nuts. So I thought, right, I'm just gonna double up on everything, and I ended up having like 100 grams of my Cocoa Pops in the morning, and I was like, I am literally in heaven. This is the best day of my life.
Living my life.
Okay, so on the flip side of that, then we have tracking and its difficulties, and we have the kind of portion sizes, the knowledge that it takes to do it. We have the whole ideas that go around like, oh, I need to get this right, I need to get this right, I need to get this right, and all the intricacies, which, as I think we're agreeing, realistically are things that cause more stress for no more results, and in fact sometimes can actually impede that process. And then we have obviously not tracking at all. So like, say we've just finished tracking, That's not so easy either, though, is it? People think that once you've done tracking, it's just an easy thing to put down. And
Yeah.
before we talk about that in between phase, like not tracking has its difficulties as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think, especially if you're used to tracking, not tracking definitely has its problems, because you're always, I guess, trying to second guess what you're actually having, because you think, is this what I would normally have? But yeah, it's a difficult one, not tracking. But you can't live your life putting all your food into MyFitnessPal. That's the thing. And I think no matter how hard it is, we can eat as, like, we're human. Like, we know, essentially, I mean, the majority of people tend to know what is slightly more nutritious and slightly less nutritious in terms of our food. But when you're comparing that to, oh, I know that I won't have hit my protein goal today, well, it doesn't matter that much because you're not tracking. And like we said before, your body's not going to really know the difference between those couple of grams that you've missed out on. So I think when it comes to not tracking, you do have to take a step back and try and forget about macros a little bit. But also, if, especially like the majority of people who I work with or who you work with, they're going to have goals in terms of their fitness, and regardless of whether it's physique or just general performance, we both know that extra protein or hitting a protein goal that is beneficial for your body is going to be beneficial. So whether you're tracking that or not, I think it's still on your mind a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the way I kind of approach this with myself, because I've done a lot of intuitive eating in the past, I'd say I was quite good at it, purely because I work on principles of eating. So like, if, for example, I'm going out for a meal, even when I'm dieting, I probably don't track. I just look at what I'm going to have. And like, I'm sure that, you'll do this as well, subconsciously, if not consciously, but like, if we're looking to have a meal, it'd be like, right, what protein source can I have?
Yeah.
What carbohydrate source? What fat source? And that
Yeah.
can be a really easy way to like, because it's like I say to people, there's a lot of things I do to make my life easier. A lot of people have asked me, how have you dieted for such a long time? But it's in the ease of doing it. So like, I don't track my cup of tea. Like, I put it into MyFitnessPal, but I don't like measure out my milk every morning and measure out the sugar. I just did it for 1 week. I literally did it for 5 days, took the average, and then just input that every day. Because
Yeah.
every day I'm not making that spoonful of sugar bigger. Like, I'm not using a wooden spoon now or like pouring in a whole liter of milk. So it's not exponentially got bigger.
Yeah.
I think that for a lot of people, what tends to happen when they stop tracking is that they've relied on the numbers in a machine for so long to dictate their hunger or their fullness. Oh, I finished my dinner, I should be full now. Because when you're dieting, that's kind of what you have to tell yourself, right? It's like, that's it, I can't have any more, I'm not going to have any more. That when you come away from that, it's like, shit, I'm not hungry, but I probably should eat something. And now I've eaten something, I'm really, really hungry. And it kind of puts everything out of whack, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think this is something as well, knowing what your body is actually telling you. Because if you don't have, and I think this is useful to get when you are tracking, because like we said earlier, a lot of the girls that I work with, they'll work towards a range, and that just gives them the opportunity to say, do you think your body needs more food? Is your body telling you you're a little bit more hungry, and maybe let's go to the top end of that range? And on those other days where you're not as hungry, you don't have to go to the top end of that range just because it's there. So I think finding or working with your body to find out, when are you full, when are you hungry, and actually knowing those signals and being able to trust them to actually take you through meals and things like that is really, really beneficial for when you're not tracking. So, a lot of my clients, and something that I've always done as well, is if we're not in, a fat loss phase, if we're just, essentially doing anything other than fat loss, because I like to get in and out of fat loss as quickly as possible. But
Yep.
Take a day or a meal off tracking. If you want to take it every week, it doesn't mean that you have to go, you could take it on a Wednesday night when you have the same dinner as you do every Wednesday. You don't have to put every single thing into MyFitnessPal, because you're essentially, hopefully, your body does know best. And getting to know your body a little bit better with tracking can help out of tracking, I find, as well, because you know when you need more, and you know when you're done, and you know when you don't need any more. And obviously, when you take MyFitnessPal away, you're going to be relying fully on your body to tell you that.
Yeah, I agree with that fully. I think that's where a lot of people create their own difficulties. They become reliant on a system that doesn't have any hormones and doesn't have any mood swings and doesn't have a busy life. It's my fitness pal and it's a machine. Whereas, as you say, when that gets taken away and we have to consider, hormone fluctuations, we have to consider work, we have to consider sleep, tiredness, and all that stuff. That's when the body will start to kick up a fuss about things, right? We've discussed this. It's exactly when things start to become more sensitive or we become more emotionally charged towards stuff. And that's where your body will start to do things. It'll start to feel more hunger. Or if you get anxiety, for example, I know that people feel less hunger or more hunger. And learning that stuff is super important. And we cannot depend on a machine for that. And just like you, I think, I say to a lot of my clients, a lot of my ladies at the moment are gaining. So for a lot of them, it's like, look, take the weekends off if you want, take a few days off during the week, take a week off, because now is the time where we can, employ a bit more flexibility because, when you're gaining, you can have a bit more, if you don't feel like eating so much, don't eat so much. If you do feel like eating more, eat some more, because at the end of the week, that average will become the average we most likely need. Whereas when you're dieting, it's very difficult to trust yourself with that level of like, I'm hungry, I'm going to eat more. When in fact,
I think it'd be a lot more stress than it's worth going through a dieting phase without tracking, because if you can see tracking is a tool that's just going to get you there a little bit quicker, and as long as you can have that kind of relaxed mindset about it, whereby it's not the demon, it's going to help you, it's just a tool that we're using, let's use it flexibly, then it is going to be of benefit. But sitting at maintenance, if you just want to have fun, live your life, train, be healthy, be balanced, you don't necessarily need to put everything into my fitness pal every day. And I think a lot of people forget that part, and I think maintenance is the most fun part, and we overcomplicate it massively.
We actually had this conversation, didn't we? When dieting, it was like, you said to me really clearly, I want to have fun, I want to go and love my training, I'm sick to death of breaking holes in my wall and ruining my house training at home, I want to go back in the gym. Did you fix those holes, by the way?
I have. Well, my partner did, I didn't. I don't know how to fix, but he broke it, so it wouldn't.
Right. Well, fair enough then. You break it, you fix it. And that was exactly what you knew. It's exactly what you wanted to do, and that's why we came at that point of like, right, we know that this is the kind of urge that we have to do, so we're going to get back to maintenance so we can fully enjoy the training and the things that it has to offer. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily listen to that side of things. And I think that in terms of the kind of rule that MyFitnessPal has over them, people only see one option, and that is, I must stick to this because this is it. A bit like what you said earlier with like your 1400 calories, for example. It's like, this is gospel, I must stick to this. When actually, I'm a big fan with dieting of being slightly more aggressive if I can be, because I like to use that motivation that people have at the start to get things rolling. Then they can see they've done a good job, and then we get them out quicker, right? It's like,
I guess that's where we differ, because I like to be more gentle. I like to take things slowly and I like to get them in and out as quick as possible, but of chopping the calories, I don't love it. So I think that's where we differ.
I think it depends who you're working with, though. Like if like you said, you're working with people who maybe are not necessarily less advanced, but like are learning the ropes of like macros and stuff. Don't get me wrong, if I had a client like that, my number one concern for that first kind of 4 weeks is teach them everything they need to know, because else you're throwing them in the flame with no fire kit, and that's no fun for anyone. That's a surefire way for them to get no results and hate the process. But like for a lot of the people I work with, so like coaches, for example, most of them have got good experience, they know how to track, they train well, so I can literally just go, right, into the flames we go, because I want to get them in and out so that we can go and do whatever else, gain muscle or whatever, which is what most people are doing at the moment, as I said. So, but yeah, as you rightly said, there's different horses for different courses. And I think that stands its stead for both tracking and not tracking. And one of the things I think, which is very prominent for you at the moment, is that middle part, that bit between not tracking and tracking. And a lot of people think that when you finish dieting, that's it. That's the end of the road. We're done. I've succeeded. But everyone forgets about the bit afterwards. And to me, the end of dieting is just halfway. That's not the end. The bit then is how we get you out of that situation, right? It's like swimming into the middle of the ocean and being like, woohoo, I won my race, with no boat to get back.
Yeah. I think I always emphasize that the diet's not the important part, it's the maintenance afterwards. And I think coming out of a diet, like what I've just done, tracking, you need to find where your hunger is again, because by the end of the diet, I was nowhere near as hungry as when I started. So coming out of that dieting phase, tracking can be useful because it's going to give you a baseline of what your, technically what your body actually needs, so that you're not sat in a deficit forever. But living your life like that, living your life counting calories every day, not going to be that beneficial mentally, and it's not really needed either, especially like you said earlier. If you can stick to healthy principles and principles of nutrition, then you don't need it. But I think the problem is, I know that what I've faced in the problem is potentially letting yourself run a little bit free with it and being like, you know what, I'm not tracking, like you said earlier, eating a full bag of nuts, I'm not tracking anymore, so I can eat what I want.
This will fit, it's fine.
It's probably not fine. I mean, I guess it is fine depending on what your goals are and what you want to do, and whether you are happy to see your body change or not. I guess you have to find out what you actually want from this period. And if it is performance and you're just wanting to fuel up and eat good, then great, but don't use it as an excuse to go out 6 times a week and eat whatever the hell you want, because essentially you're not going to be at maintenance then, although you think you are, because you're like, I'm not tracking anymore, so this must be me just living my life. But essentially that is probably going to put you into more of a surplus, and then you get really uptight again, and then you're like, right, I must go on a diet again. It's time to diet again.
And the yo-yo begins.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we like to avoid.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to, I agree. I think that if we look at like rates of like lengths of dieting phases, I in an ideal world, if somebody said to me, hey, I want to lose X amount of weight in X amount of weeks, and we agreed on that, like it was a nice rate, it wasn't ridiculous. For most people, I would kind of like a 50% to 75% time reverse. So if you dieted for 12 weeks, it would be, we'd look to reverse you for 6, because most of the time that's enough time to get someone from where they are in terms of their hunger levels and their kind of food focus and things like that, back to a place where they're like, I feel more relaxed now. But the problem with that is that for a lot of people, they're so sick of tracking by that point, and they so want that freedom again, that it's really like catch 22. And again, a conversation that we've had is like, where do you draw that line? Do we draw the line at, okay, well, we deal with these problems, but we let these ones run rife, or we deal with these ones and let these ones run rife? And that's such a complex thing. And I think, it's something you learn from the experiences that you've done, and no one can really tell you what's right for you. And I guess as a coach, just like me, you will have had experiences where you think probably should have done this there rather than that, but we have to learn as well. And it's important, I think, as an individual, if you're going through dieting phases, to think to yourself, right, if I ever have to do this again, what would I do differently? How could I do better? And I think when you are going in that in-between phase, it's important, from my perspective as a coach, to make or help people understand that the job isn't done until we get you back to a healthy place where your food focus isn't, I'm going to smash every bit of ice cream in my freezer, or like, I'm going to go and get 5 different pick and mixes, which is kind of what I want to do now, and eat them all. Because
that you say that, actually, because me coming out of my diet, all I could think about was, what meal am I going to have that I'm not going to track? For the last few weeks, I was like, what am I going to have that I don't have to track? And I think as soon as I stopped that, because we just dieted and then came out of it, and I was still tracking the maintenance. So that kept me very grounded in the fact that I didn't feel the need to be like, right, what can I eat next? Because I had this other goal to work towards. But you're right in what you're saying. People will just go the other way and be like, right, what can I eat next? What can I have once this diet is done? But something that I like to emphasize as well is, with my clients, I say to them, the diet might be done, but if you want to keep the results that you just worked so hard for, the hard work's not done, because anything's hard. Dieting is hard, maintaining is hard, gaining is hard, not tracking, they're all hard. So I guess you just have to pick your hard.
Pick your hard.
Pick your hard.
That's it. What are you laughing at, Abbie?
Oh, just my speech choices.
Okay, we were laughing at different things. Anyway, I, I think that the complexity of this is that so many people do that whole like 8-week diet, 6-week diet, 4-week diet, and like a social media and media based thing is that, but people forget what happens afterwards.
Yeah.
And so like, you know, I'm not gonna lie, like I feel like that now. Like I'm back to maintenance next week and I'm gonna start my gaining phase. So I've just done, you know, that's my 18 weeks done, and like I'm hungry, I'm pretty grumpy, I'm pretty tired, and like all I can think about is getting myself a takeaway curry. But the truth is, and this is something that really helps me when I think about that, it's like I could go and get one right now. We are so fortunate in this world.
I was just about to say that.
I could go and have one now. It wouldn't fit my macros by any sense of the imagination, but I could go and have one and I could enjoy it and it would be great. And I'm so fortunate to be able to just hop in my car and go and buy one. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like so many people don't have that opportunity. Some people don't have that availability. And like when I put it like that, I'm like, I don't even want one. Yeah. It's just the thought.
The idea of it is better.
That's exactly it. It's like part of my brain is like, we haven't been able to have this for so long. We deserve it. And I'm like, deserve what?
I think that links in with tracking though as well, because I think when you track for a long time, you just think, my God, how wonderful would it be? This is exactly what my thought processes were. Not necessarily dieting, but when I was thinking about stopping tracking, how wonderful would it be just to wake up and not have to put something in my fitness pal? Like how nice would that be? But now I'm doing it. It's more of like, oh God, what am I going to eat today? What's going to make me hit my protein goal today? What do I need to eat for pre-workout today? And is that going to fit in my calories? And what even are my calories? Because I don't have calories anymore because I'm not tracking. So
the constant battle.
Yeah, mental battle with yourself all the time. And I think once you've done it, you think, is this not tracking actually as good as you thought it was going to be? Or is it less stressful just to track? But I think you have to power through with the not tracking part, because, you know, when you're turning 60, you're not going to be turning around and saying to anyone, oh, sorry, can't have that slice of my 60th birthday cake because I can't fit it in my macros today. Like, no one's going to care. No one cares. And if you did say that, people would probably be like,
that is so 2020.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, I agree. I think as well, it's something you have to practice, you know, not tracking. I'm going to be honest, that's a scary thought to me at the moment. Because it's the thing that I've been I'm not obsessed. I can be obsessive. That's a lie actually, but I'm not someone who's like regimented. Like I don't weigh everything, as I've said, you know, I eat like salad every day and I don't tend to weigh it. I'll put ketchup and I don't tend to weigh it. But that to me is a way of making the process easier, not because I'm trying to eat more food. It just makes it easier for me. And to me, I think like if I was to stop tracking now, I'd be like, I just have to eat the same things because I wouldn't trust myself because I'm that hungry. I'm a pig. Like I can eat so much food. I look at these like 10,000 calorie challenges and I just think,
smash that. Easy.
It's just a good day.
that's the stuff. I think that's the thing with me as well. Like I've always been, I wouldn't say I've always been a hungry person, but I've always had a big appetite. So trying to it's always having to be in control of what you're eating. Like it's never just, I know a lot of people who really could not give a second thought to food. Yeah. And they will swim through their day, they'll not have anything, and they'll get to like 3:00 and then they'll eat some lunch. And I'm just like, how have you not thought about what you're going to eat yet? Like how have you not thought about what your breakfast is going to be yet? And that's, I think ever since I was a child, food has always been you have one meal and then you think about the next, like what am I going to have next? And I think if you put it like that, a lot of people will be like, well, that's a bit obsessive with food, but it is, it's
survival.
It's always been like that. And when people aren't like that, I'm like, oh my God, how are you not?
I don't know about you, but when you go out with your friends, like we go out, we're like, where are we going to stop to eat? And they're like, why are you thinking about that? That's like 6 hours away. I'm like, why aren't you thinking about that?
People want to go for day drinks, and I'm like, well, I'm going to need some food in between this period. And they're like, what? we're going drinking.
Oh,
I can't go from 12 till 7 without food.
yeah,
I'll die.
absolutely. I'd be dying. I'd be really
Yeah.
grumpy.
Yeah. But it's just, I think when, especially with me, while I'm not tracking, I'm probably thinking about food more at the minute and being
Yeah.
more controlling over what I'm eating than, not all the time, but I think sometimes more controlling about what's going in my body compared to what I was when I was tracking, which is not what I expect it to be like. But
Mm.
if you want to keep, I don't like keep it physique based, but I think if you want to stay relatively where you are in terms of your physique, you have to have that control, because you can't just, I'll use your words, eat like a pig. Like, you can't just do that.
No.
But I think when you think about not tracking, it kind of makes you think that you are going to be able to just eat whatever the hell you want.
Yeah.
I think if you care about your things like performance, especially, and how you look, then there is always going to have to be that thought there, because it's a big, what you eat is a big part of how you look.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a difficult thing for some people to put side by side with like how they're feeling at the moment, in a sense of, I really want to look like how I look now because this is how I've always wanted to look, and I've just worked really hard through this the last X amount of weeks and blah, 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 blah. But I am starving hungry. And quite frankly, I'm wondering if this is even worth it now, because I want to eat all that food. But sometimes all it takes is like a week or 2 weeks for that to dissipate, because I've seen this happen. I don't know about you, but I've seen this happen like 3 or 4 times where I've said to clients where they've like stalled out on weight. I'm like, okay, that's fine. What we'll do is we'll take a refeed. We'll see if that helps. And it's like, I've told them that and their weight is just dropped. It's almost like there's so much pressure and stress that gets built up, and it's a stressful process. It's controlled. Dieting is controlled starvation for, however you want to dress it up. That is what it is. Why the hell does your body want to go through with that? It doesn't understand a small deficit. It thinks you're either starving or you're okay. So these are all things that people don't consider. And so when you're in those times where you're like, I need food right now, that's just your brain going like, I think we're starving, we could die, we need some more food. And obviously in those moments, it's very easy to get carried away. And I think that's where having a tracking mechanism can be very helpful, because it takes the pressure off you in being like, I think I can eat this, but now I'm still starving. Like, why is that? Maybe I can eat some more. And like, I think you'll agree that turmoil is sometimes just uncontrollably frustrating and a very anxious situation to be in, because if you're kind of sat there thinking, I've got to train in a minute, I'm really hungry, but I think I've eaten enough, even as a coach, a very good coach, you must agree that you're like, fuck, I just don't know what the right move is here.
I think that's the benefit in having a coach, though, isn't it? Someone else to tell you what you're doing right and what you're not doing right. But I think that goes back to what we were saying earlier about knowing your body a little bit better. And I think tracking or not, you have to know those hunger signals, those signals that are saying you've had enough, stop eating. And you haven't just got to know them, you've got to be able to listen to
trust them,
them. Because many a times my body said to me, you don't need any more food. And do I care? No. Am I going to keep eating anyway? Yes. And sometimes that does happen, but I think when that does happen, or even I think people have days like that, weeks like that, where they'll go and they'll just be eating a little bit more, and it's always just that little bit more, and it's fine. But then that something just drops and you're like, right, it's time to just rein it back in a little bit, because I've been eating too much. And I think that's where people tend to overcomplicate it, where all you have to do is, when you get to that point where you've been eating too much, is just rein it in a little bit and focus again on those healthy principles of nutrition and eating, which a lot of people don't have because they're so stuck in MyFitnessPal.
Yeah, I agree. So we've talked about MyFitnessPal, we've talked about tracking, we've talked about food and things. What about scales? So this is something we've discussed for sure, and that is that actually the scales can be a really helpful tool in normalizing this process, and they can be your worst enemy if you choose to use them maybe in not the most efficient way.
I mean, this is actually something that when I started working with you as a client, because I am a client, I was going to say, we probably didn't make that clear. Xander is my coach. So essentially, when I started working with you and you were like, get weighed every day, I was thinking, no, thank you. Don't really want to do that, because a lot of the girls that I work with really don't like getting weighed every day. And I'll say, 2, 3, 4 times is enough. You don't need to get on the scales every day, because if I tell them to get on the scales every day, they're going to get off the scales upset every morning. And I think that's the thing. If you let the scale control how you're feeling, or even how you're doing in terms of progression, then you're going to see them in a bad way. But I think the more, if you go in the opposite way, I think sometimes you just need to be desensitized from them, and getting on scales every day can do that, because you can see the fluctuations in your weight. You can see, this is what I say to people about weight and maintenance, especially, is not a single number. You're going to move up and down within a range. And I think people get on the scales, it's gone up 0.1 kilograms, and you're like, right, diet time, got to knuckle down again. But really, you just need to go to the toilet, and it's not that much of a big difference. So I think if you use them in the right way, it's good. But I think a lot of people have a bad long-standing history with getting weighed. And I think that's something that I'm doing now. I'm getting weighed every day, but some days I'm like, yeah, this is fine. Like, that's what it is today. And that's totally fine. But if I pair that with, I'm not tracking anymore, and I've eaten a little, probably, have I even eaten a little bit more than I should have? Because I don't know, because I'm not actually tracking. But those scales are up. It just makes you second guess whether, one, you have been eating too much, or two, if you're just maintaining in a range, or if you should go back to tracking again. So I think with scales, it's a tricky one.
Absolutely. I don't think there's any right answer to it, to be honest. I think for you, the reason we did that was because, off the top of my head, it was because you weighed in on one day, I think, wasn't it? Was it one day you jumped back on and you were like, oh, shit. And this is the thing, like, I like to say this to people, is like, weighing sporadically, like once a week or like once every other week, is like blindfolding yourself and throwing a knife at a dartboard, because you could have just weighed in at your heaviest, or you could have weighed in at your lightest. But the problem is that we're so emotionally fueled towards scales that they rule our life then. And that's where weighing in every day, I actually say to people that 3 to 7 times a week is great. I think for some people in the situation that you were in, I truly believed that weighing in every day was going to be the best option. Because you're able to see that, okay, it's gone up, it's gone down, it's gone up, it's gone down, it's gone up, it's gone down. Somebody asked me about this yesterday. They said, how are you so confident? These are the exact words. How are you so confident that can just be food? And I said, okay, if you were to stand on the scales and I was to walk in and hand you my packed lunchbox, you would weigh more. Granted, you wouldn't eat the lunchbox, but if you ate everything inside of that lunchbox, that would be food in your gut. Thus, you would weigh more. If I take that away, you would weigh less. So if you went to the bathroom, just as you just said, you're going to weigh less. If you hadn't, you're going to weigh more. That is to say that you're at maintenance, right? Being female, obviously, your weight's going to fluctuate far more than mine. And I shared this, I think, maybe on the podcast last week, or if not, maybe the one before. But, I every morning religiously, before I step on the scales, evaluate myself. And I will say to myself, right, how was the last 24 hours? What did you do the last 24 hours? Did you do what you said you were going to do, or did you not do it? Because then if I get on the scales, like this morning, I nailed the last 24 hours. I was super happy with myself, and the bloody things went up. And I was like, all right, fine, you do that, because there's nothing more I could have done that would have dictated the scales going either way. And that's where you have to accept that, hey, I haven't been to the bathroom for a few days maybe, or I'm more stressed, I'm holding more water. I actually do feel quite bloated for some reason. But I think a lot of people will look at the scales and then get on and then let the scales dictate to them how well they've done. So they see the weight gone up and like, oh, fuck it, I failed. I'm a terrible person. When actually, if you look at the last 24 hours, you've done a great job. It's just that something has meant that you've weighed a bit more. And that's where I think seeing those averages and those fluctuations is quite helpful.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I get my clients to do their check-in before. I always say to them, right, your check-in before you get weighed, because it doesn't matter what your weight is. If you've had a bad week, that you've probably not even a bad week. If you've had something where you've not probably given 100%, you're gonna it doesn't matter. That you've not given 100%. So it doesn't matter what that scale said. If you have given 100%, same thing. It doesn't matter what the scale says, because if you've done everything that you need to do, then it's just a waiting game of seeing, what's going to happen with the scale. And I think that relates more to dieting than anything else. But essentially, even with maintaining, it takes a massive shift in food intake to actually see your body fat go up. Like, an extra carrot stick, that's a bad one, but
you push the boat out.
I know. Wild. But if you have an extra protein bar one day, you're not going to gain a kilogram of fat. And I think a lot of people do think that is the case. If they have one meal out, they think that, oh my god, I had a meal out, I can never have another meal out again because it's made the scales go up. But really, it's just your body moving in weight. That's what it does.
I always think sometimes we know too much, not like me and you, but people know too much, because I go out for meals with, like, it's something that my partner and I, we love to do. We love going out to eat. It's like a social thing that we like, we enjoy. And like, we'll go out with friends or family, and I just look around the table and I just think, none of you even care what you're eating or drinking. Like, you don't even know what you're eating or drinking. They'll have large glasses of red wine before you've even started. And I'm there like, I love red wine. I love red wine, but I'm even there like, I wouldn't even be able to eat my meal. I'd be so drunk at this point.
That is true though. But I think we use the term, like, in the world of fitness and nutrition, we bring that upon ourselves. We do that to ourselves. And I think, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I mean, now me wanting to just drop tracking and maintain, it's hard knowing every single calorie in every single food and knowing the macros of it and knowing what I should eat and what I shouldn't eat in order to hit X, Y, and Z. But then relating back, like, life's not always about hitting X, Y, and Z.
No, absolutely not. I think that is a fantastic point. I cannot remember where I read this. It was in a book. Or I can't remember where, but somebody said, you can, it was an eating disorder, a book. Someone can quote me. If you know where this is from, anyone, then by all means call me out, because I cannot remember. But basically it said, you can recover from an eating disorder, but the one thing you can't ever forget is the amount of macros in things. And whether you have an eating disorder or not, I wouldn't class myself as someone who has an eating disorder, but I've got an electric memory for things that are in stuff. I could tell you the macros of a lot of food. So even when you're not tracking, your brain is still adding stuff up, still mathematically doing that stuff. And I don't see that to be a bad thing, as long as that doesn't dictate and rule to you your life, social life, and enjoyment of food. If that is the case, I think that's where it becomes a problem, and maybe you should explore ways of getting help for that.
I think it's good to be able to say, well, I know this has got 800 calories in, and it's probably not going to be that filling, but I don't really care that much. Like, it doesn't matter. What? Where is what's the worst that could happen if you eat that? I think being able to do that is a good balance. And
I agree.
It goes back to think is though, like, this is what a lot of my clients have had to deal with recently, or a lot of the girls that I work with are very, very strong, and they eat more than I do, and they need more calories than a lot of people that they know. And one of them, she was at a barbecue, and someone said to her, do you know how many calories are in that? And it's like, who cares?
Thanks, mate.
Thanks so much. Like, you know how many calories in that? I probably know better than you do. Like, it's very irrelevant. It doesn't matter. So I think knowing calories is one thing, but then having that thought process behind what is a good amount of calories to have, you need to move away from that, because there's going to be a point whereby you always need to have more calories. You're always going to need
that's more. The goal, right? To be able to eat more and maintain where you are, if nothing else.
It is for us. For everyone else.
What's that? 4,000 calories at maintenance? Yes, please.
Oh, those are the days.
Oh, I love that. I absolutely love that. I think that's a really good place to wind this one up, Abbie. I really am very grateful for your time this afternoon. Could you please let the people know where they can find you, maybe an email address, let us know your Instagram. I will obviously put all of those bits and bobs in the notes section so that we can have those. People can click on them, obviously, in the comments. But if you could just let people know where they can find you, or if you've got anything to kind of share, that'd be great.
Yeah, so my main Instagram account is abbiepowell.fit. And then my coaching account is Evolve Online Coaching _. But yeah,
I'll put them both down below.
Yeah.
Before you go, have you got anything exciting going on at the moment? Throw this one in the works. Anything you want to just put out there? Are you excited for anything in particular?
You know what? Absolutely not. I have not. Well, it depends what you define as exciting, because
anything.
I'm hiring a new coach, but until she's on board, all I'm doing is working, which I don't mind, but I don't think a lot of people would find that very interesting.
Any life bits going on? Any celebrations of any description? I like asking people this because it puts them on the spot.
Well, actually, it's not that exciting. Well, it's not for me, but Callum, my partner, he's doing his training for the fire service, so he has to have a graduation, which is in a few weeks' time, and I think that's probably the only thing. I have a lot of drinks plans, which I've actually been putting off because 1, work, and 2, rain. Like, I'm not about sitting outside in the rain. So I have been putting things off quite a lot until we can sit inside. So I have, which I'm sure I'll bring up in a check-in in the future, an awful lot of plans to go out and drink. But whether I want to actually go out and do drinking all day is a different story.
I will be there if I can eat at 12, at 4.
Yes. If there is food, I will come. But that's it. Not for me.
If there's not supplied snacks, I will not be there, rain or shine.
Chilled one. It's a chilled one for me. I say chilled. It's just work. Until I've got my new coach, it's just work.
Just work. All work, no play. Well, yeah. Abbie, thank you so much. I won't take up any more of your time. I'm very, very grateful to have you. Thank you so much. I'm sure everybody else is very grateful for the conversation. It's absolutely going to be of great value, I know, for many, many people. So on their behalf, I'll say thank you. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the show. As always, do let us know if we can help you with anything. Abbie's obviously given her info below. He's Kiwi. What a legend. Yeah, have a great afternoon. Have a great day. Take care of yourselves, and bye-bye for now.